My little brother. Well, he isn't so much of a little brother anymore. He's in his mid-30s, got a wife, and they have a child together. He holds down a good job. He works hard. And he's a nice guy. Like, literally such a great guy. He's an amazing dad. He loves my nephew so much. He's a great husband. Truly great. He's one of those 21st century husbands, so you know, he's a good one.
Oh, I feel bad for even bringing this up. If Mary knew I was telling you, she'd be mortified. Right, so Mary was telling me this story about how one day she was walking her dog down by the canal and the dog takes a shit on the floor. Typical dog behaviour, nothing out of the ordinary. But the thing is, there's this police officer and she's walking towards Mary, Mary's dog, and most importantly, Mary's dog shit. And the police officer's like, aren't you going to pick that up? And I can tell by how Mary's telling this story that she's really embarrassed because she's gone bright red. We're interrupted by a phone call and Mary's shitter than usual at her job, so I can tell that this is going to be a whopper of a story. Anyway, she puts the phone down and then Mary tells me that she says, well, I would pick it up, but the thing is I forgot my poo bags. And now I know for sure that Mary's insecure because she goes on a rant about how she would always bring her poo bags and she would never ever leave a dog shit on the floor. But then eventually the policewoman asks exactly that. Well, what are you going to do then? And without a second thought, Mary tells me that she bends down and picks the dog shit up with her bare hands, walks over to the bin and puts it in. I'm like, what the actual fuck, Mary? Did you not think to promise the police officer that you'd go home, get your poo bags, then come pick it back up? And I can tell that this is the first time Mary's thought of that because now she's gone even more red. And like, we're not even that close. I mean, our desks are like 4 rows apart. But I'm a decent person, so I'm taking this super seriously. I didn't even smirk.
We decided that the 4 of us would go on a city break for Jules's birthday. Jules is Kevin's wife. We went to Marseille, just for 4 nights. It was Mike's first holiday, Kevin and Jules's child. And me and Kevin hadn't exactly spent loads of time together, so it was needed. A break from work, really, and also a chance for me to be around people. Weekends get quite lonely when you're miles away from your small family or working a job in a place where you have no friends. It was a welcome distraction from my usual deadbeat life. And we chose Marseille because, well, Jules is a history teacher, so she wanted to go for the culture, and Kevin will go wherever Jules wants to go. We arrived on the Thursday. We got a shuttle bus from the airport to the centre of town. Our spirits were high. Me and Kevin suddenly became children again, and we were making as much noise as humanly possible. We suddenly became those Brits abroad that me and Kevin shun for being absolute animals. It's like the sun. The sun and the airport alcohol fucks with us Brits differently. Anyway, we were being carefree. Even Jules was, and surprisingly Mike wasn't irritated by the weather. It was July and it was scorching, so you would have thought they would be crying and trying to get into the shade, but he wasn't. We arrived at the Airbnb. It was in the centre of Marseille, a beautiful apartment with 2 bedrooms with beautiful woodcraft throughout the apartment. For an old building, it was surprisingly modern and fresh. It was so clean. We unpacked quickly. We knew we weren't there for long, so we weren't planning to spend that much time at the apartment. Before we landed, me and Kevin decided that we would hang out because Jules wanted to go to the Marseille History Museum and, well, me and Kevin didn't. And Mike went with Jules because it's important that children attend museums and that sort of thing. And well, so me and Kevin could drink as much as we wanted without having to worry about a child. Anyway, it was about 2 p.m. and we went our separate ways. We agreed to meet at 5:30 at the local restaurant by our apartment.
Not even that close. I mean, our desks are like 4 rows apart. But I'm a decent person, so I'm taking this super seriously. I didn't even smirk. I don't want Mary to think that she can't tell me stuff like this, like I'm going to think less of her, like I do. But I don't want her thinking that. But anyway, Like, not even a sock. Like, take your sock off and use that as a tissue. And it's just me and Mary working the late shift, so there's not even anybody else in the office that I can, you know when you look at someone and you're like, what the actual fuck are we listening to? Like, I'm just on my own. I can't even take Mary seriously anymore. I just look down at those chubby fingers and I think of Mary's dog shit. I don't know what that policewoman was thinking. I bet she was right on the radio. I bet she had a good day at work. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
We were walking down a small lane and I saw this woman selling butterflies, and I can remember it so vividly because I remember thinking how strange it was that there was a need for business of butterflies in Marseille. I stopped and I was in awe. There were so many. This humble woman didn't realise how beautiful her small sanctuary was. Kevin bought a couple and so did I. I suppose it looked weird. 2 tourists buying a handful of live butterflies, but they were sentimental to us. When our mum died, we released butterflies at her funeral. So we ditched getting drunk, took the butterflies and headed towards the Plania lighthouse. It was about a 20-minute walk. About 10 minutes in, Kevin started to regret the journey out from the centre of town. He's fat and lazy, and in the scorching sun his thighs were probably burning him, but we eventually get there. We paid to get in with the butterflies hiding under our shirts. I know it sounds cruel, but they're in these small plastic bags with breathing holes in, obviously, and we kept them under our shirts due to the embarrassment of walking around with live butterflies. Looking back, we were stupid for feeling embarrassed, because if a woman was selling them in the street bar apartment, then obviously it's not something to be embarrassed about, especially when we were just making a fool of ourselves from the airport to the apartment. We get to the top of the lighthouse. We scarcely take them from under our shirts, open the bags and let them fly away. One had the most intricate design on its wings with these little specks of blue and gold. It sat on the pole that protects those on top of the lighthouse from falling to the rocks below, and it just sat there. I suppose it was catching its breath from being hid under my shirt. Kevin had a tear fall from his eye. I ignored it. I think he wanted me to ignore it. Not that crying is something we're ashamed of, it's just I didn't need to say anything and he didn't need to say anything. I knew and he knew. I'm glad we did that. It didn't feel right for us to go away for the first time as adults and not think about our mum or do something for her, you know? We had to do something. We stayed at the lighthouse for about 30 minutes. We sat on the ground with our legs dangling over the edge and we spoke pure shit. It was like therapy, but we didn't have to pay for it. I told him about this, that I saw this on the internet and that I was planning to do it. Well, apply for it. And that if I was accepted, then I would do it. He didn't quite understand. He's a businessman and, well, I'm not. So although we get on fairly well, there's always a slight divide due to who we are and what we do. And the fact that I had to explain to him what chronics is and what the scheme is, he instantly didn't like it because I knew something that he didn't. And then when I told him that he may never see me again, and if he does, he'll be an old man and I'll still look like me. My timing was bad. His confusion soon turned to anger and he was so fucking angry, like he was fuming. All he could hear was that I was gonna die or something like that. We never argue, surprisingly, so things got awkward and we decided to leave and head back to the city. That walk was the most depressing walk of my life. I would point at random things and I get some generic, "oh yeah," response. We arrived back to the city and got to the restaurant about 40 minutes early. Our phones were dead, so we decided to go back and charge them at the apartment before meeting Jules. We were also hot and sweaty, so it was a perfect time for a shower. Kevin went first.